Today. In fact, we're very excited about today's show. Nikki, why don't you, before the cameras turn on, give a little snapshot of who we have on our panel.
Oh my goodness, we have the most wonderful Katie Pearl, who is a Keller Williams Alliance Realtor. She is also very focused on the military community, which if you do not know, we have quite the military presence here in Charlottesville. And she's also a wonderful mom, person. She likes bagels and coffee, which just make me like her more. What else would you like me to say about you, Katie?
No, that's good. You didn't include like Cuban food from Wajitos.
Oh my God,
that is
I'm such a
another.
slacker. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you're gonna make me hungry.
But yeah, no, you got it. I mean,
Okay.
I've got my hands full with my family, but love being able to work my real estate business, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be here. So.
Oh, very cool. And then we also have Jason Kirby as a guest.
Love this guy.
Yeah, also another Keller Williams Alliance Realtor there, who's part of the Beckham team, does a lot with that team. Like dad of two, very cool guy. Tell us more about yourself, Jason.
I haven't been accused of that before.
He looks just like Jason Bateman from Ozark.
It has come
Yes.
up. It has
oh
come
my
up.
gosh, such a good show.
His voice, like the first time I spoke to Jason, I was like, he was.
You
know,
interrupted our conversation
I did.
to tell
me.
me.
It was so distracting. It was so distracting. I was like, I am so sorry. I feel like I'm
I can
literally
totally see you doing that.
talking
Yeah.
to Jason Bateman right now. And he's like, I've got that
Also a
before.
voice that could be good for Audible books, just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
And the Bateman thing comes up more when he's just got a new season of something out.
Ozark,
And then there's a
yeah.
rash of it
Totally
that I
true,
get
Nikki.
hit with, and then
Yes,
it goes
right?
away, and then it happens
some
again.
people just have that.
Yeah. Though I must say, like the Arrested Development days, I got more of it.
Yeah.
Now with Ozark, he's so dark that
He's so
a
dark.
lot of that doesn't come up anymore because I'm not quite like that.
You're a
I
little
wouldn't-
You don't look
unassuming
like
in that
you're
way.
involved with
I
the
wouldn't-
Mexican drug cartel.
I wouldn't. Well,
If you were, we wouldn't know.
I mean, if they had a home to buy, I would help them, but I'm not going to launder their money
Be a
at
very
all.
nice home.
Yes, absolutely.
This show is going to be so good. So Katie Pearl and Jason Kirby on set with the fabulous Nikki Chambless. Keith Smith is in the Caribbean working on his suntan right now, and we're going to go live here in a matter of moments, guys, on the Monday edition of Real Talk, presented by Keller Williams Alliance. Judah Wickower is our enterprising director, literally the foundation for the behind the scenes of our show. And Judah, we can rock and roll when you are ready, sir. Guys, good Monday morning. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate life and the pursuit of happiness. The show is presented by Keller Williams Alliance on this gorgeous Monday here in Central Virginia. Today's show is going to be absolutely fantastic. Katie Pearl is in the house. I believe this is second or third rodeo on this? Second rodeo on the network for this fabulous realtor at Keller Williams, a great mom, Charlottesville and community stakeholder, and just someone you want to be around. Someone that makes you laugh and someone that has a zest for life. Katie Pearl and Jason Kirby, guys, is our guest as well, and he's on our panel. And this gentleman, once you get him going, you just sit back and listen. You're like, this guy knows a lot about everything.
It's true.
I mean, Jason Kirby
Genius.
is well-read, well-informed, and well-experienced. You will see him in a matter of moments. And, of course, the fabulous Nikki Chambless on a Monday. She joins us on most Mondays here on Real Talk and the I Love CVille Network. And today's panel is just dynamite. Judah Wickower is our director. Let's go to that foreshot and let's welcome everyone. Katie, Jason, and Nikki, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Fantastic panel here.
Yes,
folks,
I'm so excited.
Folks know you. You're an established brand. I'm going to get out of the way here, and why don't we introduce our starring guests here and go with Katie first. How about a reintroduction to everybody that's watching the program here?
Sure, yeah. So I am a realtor with Keller Williams Alliance, and my more important role, though, would be mother of 4, soon to be 5. I'm 37 weeks pregnant.
Doing 3 weeks.
Doing 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Or today, you know.
Today. As I told Jerry, I've reached the stage of pregnancy where my belly button literally is hurting and aching, and I am ready for this baby to come out.
And I responded by saying she's beautiful, carrying it
Very,
well,
yes,
and
the
glowing.
right answer, Jerry, in
You
all
are.
circumstances. Thank you. So yes, ready to kind of just rock this mother of five thing. I never knew a mother of five growing up, so I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we're going to figure it out and just take it one day at a time. But yes, I have loved doing real estate. I initially went into it because I thought I was going to love being a stay-at-home mom, and the reality was that when my husband would leave for work in the morning and I had my 2 kids, 2 and under, I would just want to cry right away, because it was just oh my goodness, I don't think this is what I want to do all the time. And I realized that I needed to find something that was for me where I could engage with people again. I had worked at UVA previously through the Office of Housing and Residence Life there, and I missed kind of being in an environment where you could be in a meeting and speak to adults and
You're social.
Yes, I'm a social butterfly, exactly. So sticking me in a house all day with...
It was isolating.
Very isolating, yes. And so I found that real estate was kind of just the perfect fit for me in my current situation, and my husband is rock star, super supportive. And so as soon as he would get home from work, I would work my business as hard as I could every single day after he'd get home. And then on the weekends, he kind of just knew he was going to be on. And for a very long time, that's kind of how we worked it. Little shout out to ACAC has been also super helpful for me, because they have 2.5 hours of childcare included in their membership. And so that was huge in allowing me the opportunity to get a lot of administrative work done during the day when I still had my littles with me. So that's kind of been my journey leading up till now, but it's become much more full-time than I ever thought it would be, and it's just been an amazing gift to our family, and I feel like the brokerage has been more supportive than I would have ever imagined. I thought that I was going to find myself in a dog-eat-dog kind of environment, and that's just not how it was. I just had people that, Jason right away pulled me aside and gave me some great tips on how to maximize my time, because he saw how all the balls that were in the air for me and all the steps that I needed to take just to even get into the office during the week. And so his advice, along with Nikki's advice and so many other people at the brokerage that kind of just took me under their wing, was really valuable. So I'm just super grateful for KW. So. Well,
we're grateful to have you. We're grateful to have Jason Kirby as well. And guys, get ready and prepare to learn from this guy, Jason Kirby. Introduce yourself to everybody that's watching.
So I got into real estate in 1999 initially, and worked as an agent in a number of years in the Phoenix market, and then moved to New England, took an extended break from the industry, about 6-7 years, before re-entering after being a stay-at-home dad. So I relate to an awful lot. And I think that's one thing that we kind of connected on in that first meeting I met you in, is that I knew what it was like to be all right, I can put my kid in daycare for a few hours and try to make a go of this, or I can change things and make some strategic moves that allow me to do this full time, right? And so the main key was in our conversation was be strategic about your learning. You have a limited amount of time, and there's a limited number of things we need to do well in order to succeed. And so that was really also kind of my second journey in real estate. And then I met Quentin, and now I manage the day-to-day operations of his real estate team here in Charlottesville.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we are so pumped for this panel. And Nikki Chambless, I know we have quite a few topics we want to cover.
Yes, we do.
What's the first one you want to hit? You want to talk mileage and rising gas prices and how it's impacting the industry?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Katie and Jason and I, you were all talking about this a little bit earlier, and just the whole rising gas prices impacts a lot. I mean, it impacts everyone. There is almost no one that doesn't impact, truly. I mean, whether you're a stay-at-home parent who is having to get out to do grocery shopping or take care of kids or run children around, or whether you are a realtor who is hitting the road, or whether you're a home buyer or seller who are needing to leave your home to go other places so people can tour your home. Like, I have clients who left town for the weekend, for that first weekend of showing, because it's just a really good idea. But rising gas prices impact that. And while it might be a small thing, those small things build. So what do you guys think about that? What's on your mind about it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes me nervous. Like, I forget if it was yesterday or this morning that I went on CNN.com and it's one of the first things after it talks about, the things that are going on in Ukraine. It mentioned gas prices at a 13-year all-time high, and my stomach just kind of dropped because I know how much I already spend on gas as a real estate agent, and I don't drive a small vehicle because our family's so big, and I currently drive like a Honda Odyssey, and we're probably going to be getting like a larger, like it's tight to have 7 people in a Honda Odyssey, especially if you're going anywhere with luggage. So already spending several $100s a month on gas, knowing that is likely going to substantially increase, does kind of make me nervous. As I live in Greene County currently, and so I'm one of those people that kind of lives like slightly on the periphery, and but I have clients that want to see houses everywhere, right? Like in our greater MLS coverage area. So there's just a lot of traveling that goes on. When I need to go show a house at Lake Monticello, I know that that's going to take me an hour in the car. And so how much gas is going to be associated with 2 hours in the car there and back. And in this market, it's so challenging knowing that for every one house that's on the market, how many buyers are there and how many offers are there going to be. So it does, before there was kind of this feeling of really thinking through like where my time was going, but now there's even more calculus and thinking, okay, now this will take me 2 hours and I don't know, $20 or however much it's going to cost me in gas for one particular showing that may or may not lead to an offer, that may or may not lead to a one offer, regardless of how aggressive a particular buyer is right now. It's just, it's tough.
So a perfect segue, and Jason, I'm curious of your take on this topic, is what is a typical, in this market, close rate if you're representing a potential buyer that wants to put an offer on a house, and you do have to drive? Back of the napkin close rate of your buyer getting the home they put an offer on, and how that could impact like the calculus of pursuing listings that are a drive to get to.
So if we think statistically, before this crazy tight inventory that we have right now, actually probably despite this tight inventory we have right now, the average home buyer before the internet really took off took 12 weeks to find a home, looked at 12 homes on average. And that's what it was like in 1999. There was Realtor.com. They wouldn't publish the addresses of homes. There was one photo allowed in the MLS, right? Very basic. Now we're looking at 10 weeks, 10 homes was the number, at least going back a year, year and a half. So getting back to Katie, and when we're talking about looking at a home, showing folks homes, in a normal balanced market, we should be able to pull up 10 properties, go spend a day, 2 days, look at 4 each day, whatever, and pick a few that are in the top list and make some offers. And then we're just going through the offers we're writing on property. Right now, we can go look at one home because one popped up on the market. It's 45 minutes or an hour away, and we're doing that every single time. So exponentially, our costs are rising as agents right now because there is only one home to go look at when we go drive out to Gordonsville or Orange or Stanton. And so it's having a bottom line impact. When it comes to the success rate of writing offers, I can tell you that fortunately, I've chosen to spend the time a little bit differently. So when I have a buyer client, particularly first-time home buyers, we're spending more time in the office going over strategy before we hit the road. Because when they find the home and we're writing the offer, I want that to be accepted. And if we're fighting against 10, we're going to spend an hour to an hour and a half talking about strategy, about how we're going to beat out the other people.
What are those talking points?
I agree.
So it comes to talking about the difference between the list price and the true value of the home. Those are two very different things right now. The true value is above the list price. We're talking about looking at it from the perspective of the seller and the listing agent, and that's the most key thing there. When I'll be reviewing offers with a client tomorrow. We're going to be looking at a lot of offers. We've had nearly 30 showings over the weekend. So when I think as a listing agent, I'm going to be thinking like that as a buyer's agent. So we're going to be talking about not just an escalation clause saying we're going to start from A and go to B. We're going to talk about the increments of escalation, which is really the key thing in our market now if you want to beat out the competition. Not only are you going to try to beat the other offer, the question is by how much do you want to beat the other offer? That number has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So my last couple of listings, the buyer's agents who lost, and I'll call everyone who loses, and we have a conversation. The question is, of course, they want to know why, and there's a limited amount of information I can share. But more and more, I'm getting a very smart question. What can I do differently on the next one? And I had 2 agents the other day ask me this question, and it's a great question, and I kind of talked with them in more detail about that. Inspections can still happen, but they should be pass-fail if we're going to win in a competition, because a lot of buyers are just casting them totally aside. The trick is that someone there's a difference between being aggressive and competitive and being reckless. And we're seeing a lot of recklessness in our market.
And that's no inspection?
No inspection. And I think there are... Now, I have had clients go this route, but those are clients that know more than a home inspector. They've rebuilt homes with their hands. They educate me when I walk through a home. Those are the people that should be disposing of an inspection. My fear is when you have a first-time home buyer waiving inspections, my fear is they're not getting good advice. And, you're an agent, I'm an agent, and you've been in the game a long time. You don't want that phone call 3 months from now and it's like, hey, we've got a problem with our home.
And that happens.
Even
if you do all the things right.
Even if you do
one
everything
client that I swear that happened time and time again.
So I'm hearing, to answer your question, I'm hearing people losing, again, like last year, 4, 5, 6 times on a home. Now, we're not hearing as high a numbers of losses as last year, but that's because it's a tighter inventory. Rates are up. There are even fewer homes in the market, so there are fewer opportunities to be a loser. And so one of the key things I think about talking with clients is not only are we trying to be aggressive enough to win, but I also tell them, if I call you to tell you you're a loser, I want you to feel happy too. So I don't want you to go crazy here. I don't want you to regret this tomorrow morning like a bad night out. Because we could win at that price, but you're not going to like it, and you're not going to like me.
Right. Katie, what's on the mind?
Just kind of picking back off of what Jason was saying is that I think you have some buyers that have really just kind of opted to exit the market entirely because of what they've seen, because they were burned so badly last year, or because time is of the essence, right? I do, because my husband's military, I work with a lot of military buyers, and they have a specific date that they need to arrive by, and for most of them, it's the summer. And so if we can't get them into a home by the summer, or at least give them a strong likelihood that they'll be able to get into a home in the summer, they will just kind of bite at the first rental option that they see. And so that's something else that I'm finding, is that you have people that would ordinarily want to, because in the case of military buyers, there's no base housing here in Charlottesville. So it's kind of a great opportunity for people that are entering our community that are going to JAG or INJIC or something like that to be able to purchase a home and turn it into an investment property in the future. But it needs to make sense. It needs to be able to fit within their basic housing allowance. And with the rising cost of homes combined with what these interest rates are becoming and how that's adding onto their monthly obligation, it has now come to a point where the numbers don't make sense for them in terms of it being an investment next year. So they buy.
So let me ask on that. When we're talking about it being an investment next year, what are those numbers they're looking at? Because I think that one of the ways that we can help people in this market is if we kind of re-aim as to what those numbers are. I think sometimes people get these numbers and they're good and they mean well. And if you were already like a high-level investor, then yes, you have different number expectations.
Right.
But when you're looking at getting your foot in the door for investing,
right.
I truly, and for me, and I say this because I've done this myself, I think what those numbers are and what they look like are different.
Right.
So if they're here for like a year, in our area, they're going to be able to get more in rent than what their mortgage is, most likely. It would be a very odd thing, right, Jerry? We've talked about this a lot on the show.
For sure.
So what does that look like for these people that you're talking about?
So So yes, it depends, right? So if you have dependents, you get a certain amount of money. So let's say you're a captain that's coming to this area, your basic housing allowance with dependents for the 22911 zip code would be $2,460 a month. Now, keep in mind that usually what people want to see with that is their mortgage plus their utilities included in that. So, so let's say you'd want your mortgage to be no more than like $2,200 a month. And again, this is for that 22911 zip code, which I believe is kind of like northern Albemarle, is it not?
I can check that out. I'll check it out right now.
I think that's like close
our
to
office
Inject.
is 22901.
The 22901. This is 22911.
Oh,
right.
I totally misheard you. Thank you.
And
yes.
so yeah, I'm pretty sure that's kind of like up by the Inject area.
That is. Absolutely. I'm looking it up right now.
Northern
Albemarle
Albemarle.
North. Yeah.
And so that's a captain. If you're a major, you're basic housing with dependents. So assuming that you at least have a wife would be 27, or what spouse I should say, $2,700 a month. And then if you're a lieutenant colonel, which there's less of those, would be $2,883 a month. Now for some of the enlisteds, these are very different numbers, right? So you'd have like basically, we'll just average around $2,000 a month. So, people are just having to take that into mind when they're figuring out, okay, what is my mortgage going to be? What are my utilities going to be? But then you also think the flip side of this, right? It's also very difficult to find a rental.
Yes.
And within certain communities, like, again, speaking about the military community here, there's this perception, and perception is not always reality, but the perception is that Forest Lakes and Crozet are where all the military people live. And that's just not true.
Definitely not true.
But that is what
Nope.
the perception is for people that are coming in. And so when they come to me, they're like, oh, well, I need to be in one of these areas. So then you're kind of having this conversation explaining that that's not necessarily the case for everybody. And I understand why you're thinking that, because your friends that lived in those neighborhoods are telling you that. But given the low inventory, we have to be a little bit more open, right? If I have somebody that comes to me and says, I want to be in Forest Lakes and I want 4 bedrooms and I want a basement and I want a fenced in flat backyard and a 2-car garage, and I want it to be, under $450.
Right. And what do you say?
You say, well,
Come on.
what I want to do is I want to pull up for you.
Right.
What houses are currently available in Forest Lakes? Oh, actually, right now there's not a single one available currently.
We just need a time machine.
Right.
Where's the DeLorean and the flux capacitor?
Right.
That's what Jason is saying right there.
Right.
If
And
we
so,
had teleportation, then we could live somewhere else and commute.
but that's hard, right? Because that's a ton of money. That's a lot of money. And so when you think, I have a lot of money and I don't even get an option, basically it's like, oh, there's this one house came on the market and this is what it's like. It's not 4 bedrooms, it's 3. There's no garage, but there is a basement, and you're having to make all these sacrifices before they've even come, because a lot of these buyers are buying sight unseen. They don't even live in the area, right? And so it can just be a little discouraging, I think. So, but like Jason said, I think the best thing you can do in this market, or any agent can really do to kind of set up their buyers for success, is having those kind of long conversations on the front end so that expectations are managed. So that you're saying, listen, especially if let's say you don't have a conventional, you're not able to purchase with a conventional loan, you're going to be buying with a VA loan or some other federally backed loan. Well, in terms of the eyes of most sellers, right? Sellers are either looking for a cash deal or they're looking for a conventional loan deal. And so having a VA loan, why is a VA loan a little tougher for a seller? Well, because VA loan appraisers are going to come in and they're going to be a lot more scrupulous than a conventional loan appraiser would be. And so, so what I tell my VA loan buyers is, one of the things that we need to kind of anticipate is, let's say this VA loan appraiser comes in and says, we need this little broken window over here in the corner fixed before you guys are able to proceed, right? Do these sellers want to have to pay to have the glass company come out to fix this broken window, which my buyers probably already saw in the home inspection and aren't worried about, right? But it doesn't matter whether my folks are worried about it. It matters whether this VA loan appraiser is going to let the deal go through or not based on this one little crack.
Sure.
And so, so one of the things I try to tell my folks to do is to offer some sort of an allowance for any appraiser required repairs. So, maybe saying, we're willing to contribute up to X number of dollars towards appraiser required repairs. Just so that even though we can't control the time that would be involved in making that repair, we can at least control the financial output that would have to come from a seller if they were to pick their offer.
So when it comes to that whole VA loans aspect, right, do you find that every time you make an offer, you need to make sure you're educating that listing agent on the perks of a VA loan and why it's not? Because I feel like because we're in an area where, yes, we have a large military community, but we don't have like a base, right? So I feel like that makes a difference in how aware the community is, and our local trusted advisors who are realtors, hopefully they know, but I find oftentimes they don't, because sometimes they don't run into VA loans often. Do you educate that other person on the other side to say, hey, I understand you might be nervous about this. First of all, you can ask me any question you have about it. And here are some bullet points of what you probably need to know.
This is, you're referencing the seller side?
When you are making offers for your buyers who have VA loans, right? And you're working with that listing agent, trying to get your offer, your client's offer, right? Because it's not your offer. You're not buying that other house.
Right.
You have one. You'll buy other ones, but not this one.
Right.
In that case, what you're doing, right, is trying to sell that listing agent on that offer that you really want your clients to win.
Yes, and I think also using a local lender that is really familiar with VA loans that can kind of also help kind of give that listing agent some sort of reassurances that, hey, I do these VA loans all the time. We're not going to be held up. We've got our VA loan appraisers all set up. This is going to close on time. This is my rate of on-time closings, which is I always close on time. That's what you want to hear. But then also giving them those other reassurances that are built into the contract and kind of walking them through that, either on the phone, which I think is most helpful, but if you can't do it over the phone, kind of outlining why you are including all of these terms into your kind of presentation email that you're sending your offer in.
Well, and just because you're working a VA loan doesn't mean you can't put a down payment as well. So you can still get all the, as a buyer, you can still get all of those VA loan benefits and also put a down payment on to make your offer more competitive.
And it decreases your funding fee.
Exactly. It decreases your funding fee. It's going to lower your mortgage rate. As you move a year or three later, that return on investment, if you're just looking at mortgage versus rent, which often people do, and you really should look at the bigger picture, but let's just narrow it down, then you're in a much better place, right?
Right, and that also reminds me of something I was going to say before. So, when you look at the limited number of rentals for a lot of these families, there's you have to think, okay, well, if I'm spending, let's just say you get a steal of a deal on a rental and it's like $2,000 a month, right? So $2,000 a month times 12 months in a year. So how much are we then spending on a home? That's $24,000 that you just lost this year. And if you're going to be here, let's say 2 years, right? That's almost $50,000.
Yes.
So when people kind of pose this question, people have this huge fear of overpaying right now, but then you have to ask yourself, well, if you're going to be in this home for any amount of time, really, are you overpaying by $50,000?
You're saying over the long run, you're not going to overpay.
Right, you're not overpaying.
You make it up. Let's get Jason Kirby in the mix here. Apartmentlist.com highlights that Charlottesville rents 1.1% uptick in the last month.
Yeah.
In a 30-day cycle alone, rents in the city of Charlottesville have gone up 1.1%. That's a terrifying number right there.
It is. It really is. I think, and you touched on something which I think plays into this, and that is that, when we talk to people, whether they're buying or selling a home, interestingly, a lot of people feel good when they come to the table to talk initially. But when we start talking about the reality of the market, we're demonstrating something to them, that there's a big difference between nominal wealth and real wealth.
Ooh, put that in perspective.
So
I love that statement.
Just because your bank account is bigger and your salary has gone up, has it gone up 15% this year? Because that's the rate at which we're seeing appreciation in some real estate assets. Are we looking at a 1% monthly increase in rentals, right? So everything has gone up. We talked about gas. we don't need to talk about groceries, but all of us are paying ridiculous amounts of money for the same quality of food, if we can find it in the store. So we are looking at tax increases, inflation, rise in asset prices.
Personal property tax increases?
Personal property tax increases. Now, and some of that is different because, there's an argument to be made that Charlottesville is just behind in some of those things in terms of what it wants to provide. It's a whole nother conversation.
It is.
But for the most part, right? For the most part, when we think about your average person who just wants to consume, wants to go out and buy a home this year, they're going to be shocked. And this is definitely the case when we're talking about, and I've talked to multiple people this past 30 days who want to sell and buy a home. Other than the improvement in quality of life that we're talking about and the change of residences, you're not gaining anything here. In fact, multiple people will be in that pie taking a little bit out because it's a lot of work to have a home sold and go buy another one. But when we look at someone who's thinking of, now if I had a client, I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack from you. If I have a client who's looking at being here 2 years, and we're looking at rental rates of $2,000 a month, we're looking at $40,000. If we were to take that and look at it as a mortgage, a small percentage of that is equity, right? So
especially in the first few years.
It's mostly interest.
Yeah.
Right.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to them about what will happen in 2 years when they call me to sell their home for cost of sale, right? And we're going to talk about cost of purchase, which often feels like it's not quite there. But it is there. And so when we look at that, then the question becomes, hey, do you think your home's going to appreciate over X percent to be in the black when you call me to sell your home? That to be said, again, this culture, this nation has done our industry has done an amazing job at selling people on home ownership for some very good reasons. But ultimately, it is not the right move for everybody.
You're getting props, so let's highlight some viewers and listeners, and then we get to you guys. Paul McCarter at Avenue is giving you some props right now, Jason, for what you just said. Thank you, Paul, for watching the program. Katie is getting some serious props on her feed from a buyer that she helped, Renee Van Allen. Charlottesville is also so unique because there isn't a traditional military installation, she says. So there are many single soldiers also looking for housing that may have traditionally been housed in barracks. And she also said that she had an amazing experience as a military family coming from out of state with Katie Pearl as her representative. So she's like singing your praise. I mean, she continues.
Renee. Yeah.
Natalie Sizik giving you some props here in the feed. Jason Kirby getting props from, looks like family, Mary and Jessica right now.
There we go, yeah. Thank you.
So this one's coming in. Paul says it isn't the best decision for everyone to buy a house, which is coming from a realtor to say that. Ray Cadell has made that comment a number of times. Not everyone in this market is going to be a homeowner, nor can be a homeowner, he has said. This is coming in from Stacy, who is watching in Belmont, and she says, please ask Jason what he offered to the buyer representatives for the answer, what could we have done better? We're looking for specifics, please. Specifics, please.
Really good question. So in some cases, we're looking at the difference between a traditional home inspection and a pass-fail inspection. That is one key difference there. And I think the tendency in our industry is to call these simple inspections, but I think that's a mislabel because it oftentimes scares a buyer into thinking that they cannot do the same amount of inspections and the same kind of inspections under that process, but they most certainly can. The question comes down to with a pass-fail is what can be done as a result of those findings, and what it conveys to the seller is that this is a take-it-or-leave-it situation. The buyer is reserving the right not to buy a lemon, but is not reserving the right to have any contractual space where they can go ahead and start to ask for certain things to be repaired or to ask for certain seller credits. From a seller's perspective, it's a bit alarming to look at 10 offers and to see these huge escalation clauses over list price and see a traditional inspection, because their fear is, and I've heard this, is, well, they're just doing this and then they're going to get me on the back end. They're going to ask for a lot of money. Like, this is phase one. This is like a Trojan horse. And so it takes a bit of it takes a bit of time to talk a seller through that and to reduce that alarm level. So that's the first phase. And then I touched on this a little bit, but I want to dive into it a little bit more. If we have your average home right now is getting 10 to 20 offers, 75% of them will have escalation. And if you're doing a $1,000 increment escalation, you're not ahead. And you need to, I really recommend expanding that. I think $1,000 was last year or the year before. Probably more of a 2020 strategy than a 2022 strategy. And if a traditional inspection is key to your client, and I'm not sure if Stacy's an agent, or even as a home buyer, if a traditional inspection mortgage business,
nice.
Is a key part of your client's strategy, you need to increase those increments in the escalation. So if I'm a seller and I'm looking at the 10 offers, and one has a decent price on it, it's a traditional inspection though, and I'm now comparing it against one that is pass, failed, or no inspection, how much is a traditional inspection worth in terms of risk to a seller? Is it $3,000? Is it $5,000? And those are your increments for escalation. And then finally, I think it is just being a buyer's agent, you should be asking what an ideal closing date is for the seller. You should be wanting to make that seller's day. And so nailing that, maybe offering complimentary seller possession, as long as the loan program allows you.
Complimentary seller possession. That is a new term that I just heard here. So
I did just make it up, but yeah.
Complimentary seller possession.
Yeah.
Normally, seller possession is in a transactionary type of scenario, and seller possession is they agree to sell the home, but the seller has X period of time to stay in the home as they find another place, and often are paying rent to the new buyer. Now you're saying this is, in this environment, it's complimentary?
I don't think any buyer out there should be charging a seller to stay in the buyer's new home. That's the market we're in right now.
Oh my gosh, my mind just exploded right now.
At least I think literally there's an amount of time where I think it's acceptable, and I think it could be. The reason why is a lot of sellers.
Are we talking days, weeks, months?
I'd say a couple weeks I think, because the reason why is for a seller to get their home on the market and to be reasonably confident about where they're going, they've got a problem on the other end.
Sure, I get that.
So my buyer has an opportunity to solve everyone's problem so long as they have the flexibility. So if I've got a buyer in a lease and they've got plenty of runway, we're going to use that to our advantage in competing against other agents. And if I have a seller who has a bit of a problem, a lot of sellers are going into new construction because it's the most reliable way to exit a home currently.
Sure.
But we've got a loose target date. Right? The builder cannot guarantee a hard date until a certain pinpoint in time, and that's often not 30 days out when we've got the offers coming in.
Danny McDougall watching in the mortgage business. You have multiple mortgage officers, including Emily Coulter watching.
Nice.
Danny
Hello,
McDougall
Emily.
says Fannie Mae allows 60 days.
Yeah, there's a limit.
For that.
There's a limit to it, and VA also has a restriction on when someone needs to occupy a home. So there is a limit to what can happen with this, but even if you could offer a week or two for someone to move in a less stressful environment, I think that says a lot, even if the seller doesn't take you up on it. This is assuming your buyer can do it. And so, again, there are probably some excellent agents out there that would disagree with me on the tactics here, but typically we're talking
that's a great tactic.
We're talking about possession, we're talking about inspections, we're talking about the dollar.
Well, and to me, this is the difference between, a lot of times I feel like in this market, people are kind of leaning toward desperation, trying to figure out what to do. And this is a great example of, if you just take a step back, if you breathe a moment, if you think it through rationally and reasonably, there are solutions to be had. And there's no reason to feel desperate about it. It's a challenging situation, but truly it's a challenging thing to buy a house in any market. It's just a little extra challenging right now. And when you have solutions like that, that makes it so much simpler.
I think
right?
Another key, and this is a little minor, but we should get back to it, is that there should be a great lender on that paper when it comes across. There really should.
Wait, great lender, you mean a local guy or gal with an established brand that both sides of the deal know and trust? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And while that may not be a deciding factor in some cases, I think that...
Forget Rocket Mortgage viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
Keep it local, please.
There are some national lenders out there that might provide a slightly lower rate, but have an atrocious record of closing on time. And if I'm a buyer's agent and I'm talking with the lender regularly, and I don't want to be calling a call center to get an update on why a document's missing. And I don't want to get a list of conditional items within a week of closing that should have been presented 2 or 3 weeks before. There are outstanding local lenders, and really buyers should be taking advantage of them.
You got a lot of them on the feed here. Emily Ann Coulter has given Katie some props and loving the conversation. Katie, or Emily, we'll get to this these comments that you have for Katie. My mind is still like literally blown here over complimentary seller possession here. That is the first time I have heard that term, and it's undoubtedly like an arrow in the quiver, if you may.
Absolutely.
That's the first time I've heard that strategy right there. So does complimentary seller possession, could that be more advantageous in closing a deal than the waiving of the home inspection contingency? Or are we in a situation where you have to do them all to win now?
So it comes down to how bad the client wants the home, and I think it also counts on how much that home is a unicorn. That is, another one of these is not going to pop up anytime soon, but they could be both involved if the buyer has that much flexibility. But if you have these strengths in certain areas with the client, you should exert them to their maximum potential. There are going to be other needs that you cannot flex on. I also think it depends upon the home. If we're talking about a home in questionable condition, then you may be wanting, your goal may be to try to buy a traditional inspection. You are trying to buy all these things in the process. You're trying to buy the terms and conditions of the contract, but not all homes are right for that.
This one is my favorite comment so far. This is from Mike.
Mike
goes, Katie is looking smoking hot right now.
Gosh,
I'm going to say,
husband.
Mike, you outkicked your coverage.
Oh my goodness, he did not.
Exclamation point right there.
What I was going to say is I think Jason's right. I think the home really does kind of set the tone also for what the seller's going to want. I had a listing that home was built in 1940, and the seller was really concerned about what the home inspection was going to reveal. And there was 6 offers on the table for it, and the offer that ended up winning was actually an FHA loan. And it ultimately did not, that offer ultimately won because they agreed to not do an inspection at all. And so I think it might have been slightly, like somebody had offered to escalate like $1,000 above that, but obviously for this seller, that $1,000 wasn't going to be the needle mover for her. Not having to worry about an inspection being done on this 1940s home was the, I'll deal with whatever loan, I'll deal with whatever I've got to deal with because I'm so scared of what this inspection's going to reveal.
Yeah, because it's an 82-year-old home.
Correct.
I think, too, what we're dealing with is, and I think also we're looking at, you get 10 to 20 offers on a property, at least half of them are probably going to have some form of appraisal gap coverage. And
explain that.
So that's the difference between that's the gap that we sometimes are seeing between the appraised value of a property and
bringing cash to the table
and the contract price of the property. So I think that one of the conversations, and I have this even with first-time home buyers, is we talk about all of these things, some of which sound scary, but the idea is that when they find their dream home, and I come back to these issues, they're a bit more prepared. I don't want to have these strategy conversations when we're talking about something that they have fallen in love with. I want to talk about all that stuff beforehand, then let them fall in love with a home or find a home that suits their needs. And then we can go back to these strategies and say, okay, if the basket of things we talked about before, which do you feel comfortable employing on this home? Because it's going to vary based on the home's condition. So some offers will be able to say, in a rare case, we'll cover any difference between the appraised value and the contract price. That's a buyer that has either deep pockets
loaded for that,
or super confident about the value of that property. And that's a buyer who's probably looked at quite a few homes. Or we're looking at someone that can afford $10,000 worth of appraisal gap coverage.
Okay, so follow-up question to this, and Nikki, you jump in here as well. How many deals have you guys done in the last, why don't we call it the COVID calendar? So the COVID calendar is from COVID March 2020 to now. How many deals have you done that have been either all cash deals and or a buyer making an offer, the home does not appraise for the offer, and then the buyer has to bring cash to the table to close the gap? How many deals have you guys done like that? Either of those scenarios.
So out of let's say 47 deals.
That's a lot of deals.
I actually have not
Congratulations.
had things
Oh,
since
she's
COVID.
great.
I'm just trying to think since COVID
She is
started.
crushing it, yes.
I would say, I think maybe my group, what I see is different from what Jason sees, but only a few cash on some land deals.
Okay. So all cash?
Cash, but it's land,
Okay.
so it's
Lower price point.
Right, lower price point. And then I've not had a home. I guess I had one home that did not end up appraising out, and it was a very stressful situation because you usually don't find that out until a week
Bottom of
before
the
you're
ninth
set.
inning.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was just a situation where kind of everybody wanted to see this deal go through, and everybody came to the table to kind of make those numbers work. So the seller came down a little, the buyer came up a little, and yeah, we just all came together and made it happen. So, but that's been the case for me. But I'm going to guess that Jason has a lot more cash deals than I do. So
I do. I tend to have more cash transactions and cash clients than I think on average most.
Because you're working middle to upper road price points?
I have a higher price point than the median. A lot of my clients may be simultaneous ownerships. They've got 2 or 3 properties around the country. But then again, I work with a lot of first-time home buyers too.
Not 1031s though.
No, that's fairly rare for me. So these are people that just bounce around to different properties depending upon the weather, and it must be nice. So that allows me to come into a bidding war a little bit stronger and a little more confident. But that doesn't mean that my client's ready for that. So they might be there. It all depends upon when they last bought their last home. If it was 2012 or 2013, we're going to have a very different form of education that goes on about the market they're in. I have not noticed any gap between appraisal value and contract price since COVID started. That's on the listing side or the buyer side, and I do about 50-50.
So the appraisals are checking in.
Surprisingly, in my opinion, I know we agents complain about appraisers simply because it's something totally outside of our control.
Yeah, you don't have control.
Right, exactly, right? And so it's something we have to react to. And it usually happens right when we think everything else is buttoned up in a deal. But either the appraisers are doing a darn great job or a darn horrible job, but everything's coming through pretty much on point. I'll tell you one thing that's interesting. It's been a while since I've had something come in over contract price, to the point where I felt really good about my buyer situation. I haven't seen that in a few years.
yeah, it's within a couple $1,000s every time.
There was one I had that came in 10% over. I mean, I knew the price, but
Local?
again, local.
Almore County?
Yeah, but this is going back. This is like 2017.
Okay.
And
Different market.
It was an amazing, completely different market, different world, and I just haven't had any good things like that happen. But yeah, and I know a lot of the appraisal process too is kind of becoming automated, and I've seen some not be able to gauge quality of home, condition of home, things like that. It's not a factor. But I haven't had any appraisals I've had to pull apart and look for problems in to save a deal. I know there have been a few, but I haven't heard any recent horror stories.
Right.
No, well, and so my experience is a little different just because I've had a bit of a gap for the last 8 months, right? But for 2020, I had transactions closing from June until December, and then in 2021 from January until, I'm not really sure, actually, that one that just never would close. It was very special, which many of our transactions are, right? And in that time, though, I've never worked with a cash deal, not fully cash. I do tend to try to make my life a little more challenging because it's exciting that way. And I also advise my agents not to do the same that I did. But those just weren't my clients, right? So my experience was more along the lines of I had a JAG student who was looking to buy a property while he was here for all of 9 months so that it could become an investment property for him. And I had what's called a Tidewater. So that appraisal actually came in a little under.
Right.
Now, as a realtor, I think the value of that property and the list price was actually very solid, but it was a very unusual property. And that's what made it challenging to appraise. And so in that case, not only did the buyer need to put some money, both the listing agent and I sacrificed parts of commission to be able to make this happen because the seller wasn't going to budge.
We did that. I did that as well on the Tidewater that
Exactly.
I had.
So that whole Tidewater aspect is unique, and that is where if you are a buyer using a VA loan, if you have funds that you are willing to bring to the table and can, that's very powerful, and it's now a positive toward your offer with the VA loan as opposed to oh gosh, what is this VA loan thing, right?
I think in this market, it kind of doesn't matter. Because again, we've got 10 to 20 buyers on a property. Someone in that pile is going to be the next one in line if there is an appraisal issue. So it's going to be some time before the appraisal gap issue really even becomes an issue, I think.
Yeah.
And until more buyers
really
drop.
think so?
Yeah, because if we've got a stack of offers, someone in there is going to step up. So if it's not the first people in line,
Step up with cash.
step up with cash, or
cover the
a
gap.
cash offer who wasn't as high as someone who just was like, hey, I'm going to put 5% down, I'm going to push this to the max, right?
So to play devil's advocate there,
Yeah.
the only other side of that coin that I see is that a decision even as big as buying a home and taking on a mortgage or putting that kind of cash down is that while we like to think it's a very rational process, it's not. And so I do see sometimes people are like, well, I didn't get that, screw this,
Yeah.
right? And that does happen, and it's not a very rational way to go. But
No.
also when you have a trusted advisor who has front-loaded all this education and prepping you, that helps so much.
Yeah.
So the feed is blowing up right now. I'm going to try to get to as many comments as possible
Okay.
here. We do have a hard stop of 11:25, which is right around the corner. We're having a blast right here on Real Talk on the I Love CVille Network. Time is flying, guys. We're already an hour into this. So I want to get to a couple questions here. And Emily, we'll get to yours. This one's from Jonathan. So the complimentary seller possession is clearly something that is like making people, what? Where is the buyer going to go from Jonathan if it goes 30 to 60 days in a complimentary seller possession? Are they going to a hotel? There's not short-term rentals around here, especially if the buyer has to sell their home to purchase the next one. That's a
Yeah.
great question.
It's an excellent question, and really, Jonathan, we're only seeing these extraordinary things because when you, again, I'm going to keep going back to this number, you've got 10 to 20 people bidding on a property. There's someone in that stack who can do this because they might have 90 days left on their lease.
So you're saying it's an anomaly?
Well, look,
There's a lot of
it's an
people in that
anomaly.
situation
Yeah.
renting.
It might be the minority of people who can do that, but they're going to win if they can do it. So they're going to be the people capturing the sales, but it's because we have so few homes. We have 1 month's supply of inventory. We should have 5 times the number of homes on the market than we do. The market is unhealthy. It is sick. There shouldn't be such a thing as complimentary seller possession or appraisal gap coverage. There shouldn't be an issue around that, but it is. And so when we're looking at 10% of the buyers out there being able to achieve something like that, they're going to be the ones that get the homes until this changes. So it's few and far between buyers can probably do that, but they're going to be the ones that get
Yeah,
it.
and speaking to Jonathan's question too about if a buyer has a home that they need to sell, that's a really hard situation to be in right now.
Domino deals.
Right, because they're not likely to win out in these multiple offer situations. Because as a seller, why would you want to take on that risk and go along that journey with that buyer when you don't have to do that with one of the other 10 offers that are coming through? So I saw it kind of work out recently when I had a buyer that just happened to like a home that was one of these unicorns in that it had been on the market for like over 60 days. And so those sellers were willing to kind of go on this journey with them because their home had not yet sold. But for homes that just hit the market, if you have to sell your home and include a home sale contingency, that's going to be a really hard sell when there's multiple offers, which almost most of these listings that hit the market.
The home sale
are.
contingency,
They all
you guys are the experts. I just have a microphone here. The home sale contingency, I guess, would most benefit a seller of a home that's trying to buy into new construction that has some runway to work with.
I think you're right. I think there's almost no place for a home
existing.
sale contingency in this market right now. And there is a so the lending industry has been trying to step up into this space and fill the gap with a product that can allow a homeowner to go out and buy a home without a home sale contingency,
Yes, I've seen that, yeah.
that they can then go sell their current home, and if they can bring the down money in within, say, a 90-day period, everything's good and okay.
Which in this market should be quite simple to do, right?
Well, when I talk to clients about this, I explain that to them, and I'll say, now talk to the lender because they have way more detail and information for you. I'm only going to speak to it from an agent perspective. Now, when I look at that, the advantage is tremendous because we can go shopping for homes now without that home sale contingency, which is guaranteed to make sure you're going to lose on the bidding war. But the thing is that, what you're looking at is you do have some risk. You have what we'll call market exposure. Because now for the next 90 days, we're going to cross our fingers and toes that the market's going to be okay in 90 days when we go to sell your home. Now, recent history has told us that this is okay.
But
Longer
you have
term,
to prep for anything
right?
as
Exactly.
possible.
Anything,
and if
anything
that
is
would
possible.
tank somebody's life, then it might not be the best decision to make, right?
And so I think it comes down to those margins. Like, we think your home's going to sell for X. But if it's sold for X minus 10 grand, X minus 20 grand, are you in the doghouse now? Because if so, we're cutting things really too close. So I want to make sure there's enough margin in there that when we do go on the market with your home, we can get it sold quickly. You've got some buffer on what you need, and we can get you, you can wrap up the remainder part of your loan program. And outside of a shock to the system, which I shouldn't, knock on wood, I shouldn't tempt considering the events of the past 2 years. They should be okay, but things can happen, things can change.
What's the shock to the system? And let's highlight some viewers that are watching the program, and then we'll get to that topic. LaRon Turner Luis, giving Katie props. Debbie DeFranco, giving Katie some props as well. The question is on the feed, so we're live on 15 Facebook pages, 15 Twitter accounts, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, LinkedIn, Instagram, across the board here. This one's coming in from multiple platforms. Are we not heading toward a bubble? And I've tried to say multiple times on this show from various shows that we do here that this is not a bubble because of the equity that's been accrued, because of the tighter lending restrictions, because of the insulation protection of University of Virginia, because UVA is going to admit more students this fall, hire more people this fall to serve those students. We still haven't had the data science school open, and people often counter my point of is this a bubble by highlighting the war, highlighting oil and gas escalation, and highlighting the fact that there's no inventory in the market and that these properties are selling in hours instead of like weeks, days, months.
Yeah.
Anywhere you guys want to go on that topic? Katie, you want to hit that one first? Bubble or no bubble?
I mean,
have you thought about this?
Yes, I have a lot. I think that I don't think that we're in a bubble, mainly because there was no new construction for so long that there's just not enough homes for people to now fill in, right? So if you think of all these older homes that people lived in maybe 20 years ago that were maybe an old home back then that now are kind of quite decrepit or that people just aren't wanting to go into. And normally you would be able to fill in with new construction that had been built sometime over the course of the last 10 years. But you look and you go, well, that didn't happen, right? We haven't had construction for so long. So I just don't see where people would go. But I don't know, maybe Jason could speak more to it.
We're 25 million home under inventory nationally. So that's to her point. New construction has not kept up with demand. Certainly, Jason, not here in Charlottesville and Central Virginia.
It's true. It's true, and I think about it every day.
Bubble every day.
I think about whether it's a bubble every day. Now, I generally come back to the same conclusion every time, but I'm also talking to lots of clients and fellow agents about these same issues. You can't watch prices increase at the rates they have without asking this question.
Double-digit increases year over year.
History tells us that when that happens, things are too hot and they tend to pop. However, the difference is that, first off, real estate is a regional industry, not a national industry, but '08 was a national event, and so we're kind of all children of that, and we think in national terms. So to your point, Jerry, it's a local market, and it's a strong local market. Outside of someone coming in and building 10,000 homes overnight, we're not going to experience a dramatic decline in housing, I think. The things that are going to impact prices moving forward, I think, are going to be the rise in interest rates. So for any of my clients who are putting 5% down on a home last fall, if they go and do that right now, their monthly costs are 13% higher just due to a 1-point increase in the interest rate. We factor in inflation. We want to factor in, 10% tax assessment increase, 10% tax increase.
11.69% in the city
So
year over year.
we're looking at an over 30% increase for someone going into the city. Let's see all that happens. Someone going in to buy later this year in Charlottesville is looking at 30% higher in terms of monthly costs than they would have normally. Interestingly, a lot of people seem to be able to still do this because of the shortage of the number of homes. That is not an easy thing. We cannot build our way out of that in time for it to even make sense. So I think we're looking at, even if we had a shock to the system, we're looking at a decrease in the rate of appreciation most likely, instead of an actual decline in prices, the kind of which that we're fearful of. Even if you took everything under the moratorium and threw it on the market as a pretend foreclosure, it's half of what happened in 2012, just that 1 year. It's a drop in the bucket. And most of these people all have tremendous equity, and they're not going to be foreclosures.
Daniel McDougall. Daniel, I'm going to give you a new moniker here, DMAC. Daniel McDougall. Think about it as an adjustment, not a bubble. Small loss of buyers and pool at all levels due to higher rates. So
Exactly,
it's
yeah.
by area and price range, not across the board. Due to cost of land, we cannot build our way out of this market. And I'll add to that, not only due to cost of land, but due to red tape and bureaucracy. 5% of Albemarle County is designated for development. Of that 5%, it also includes commercial, and not all the land in that 5% area has the topography to build upon. So I want you to think about that. We've had multiple board of supervisors come on this network and sit in these seats and say, until the current 5% is fully developed, and then they highlight Seminole Square, Albemarle Square, Fashion Square Mall, we're not going to expand the developmental area. So if we're going to restrict development to only 5% of Albemarle, we cannot build our way out of this.
No, we can't. And you know, getting back to another point, because you talked about an age of a home, our housing stock has gone from 30 years of age, and it's approaching now 40 years of age on average. And we're looking at a lot of CapEx coming up on a lot of things.
Explain CapEx.
So it's the things we tend never to think about. And scarily, a lot of real estate investors don't think about. It's the roof you need in 10 years that totally eradicates all your profit for the past 10 years. And then you're looking at just your appreciation and the equity buy down by the tenant. And it changes the dynamic of everything we look at. We have bridges, roads, schools, everything. The bills are coming due. And a lot of us don't really know the cost of those things. But, you know, there's a school in Charlottesville that's becoming a hot button issue for remodeling and renovation, right? And while I don't know much about that particular school, I know it's one of 1,000 in Virginia that have similar issues. And there are only 9 localities in Virginia that are allowed to levy a sales tax. So they're all...
Because it's a Dillard rule state.
There are no levers left. There are no levers left to fix a lot of these things. So I think we're looking at not just...
Oh, you got the meals tax and the lodging tax as a potential lever,
But
outside of real estate.
Sure, but if you have a convention town, occupancy tax is a huge thing.
Sure. Transient occupancy tax.
You
is
need
what
some
he's talking
big
about.
hotels, really big hotels, right? So I think, getting back to the point, we're not the only locality that's struggling at a crossroads. What is this community going to look like in 10 years? Is it-
Homogeneous and
right.
wealthy.
Yeah. I don't see, you know, when we talk about the shortage in housing, a lot of that, you know, the county's not allowing anything to get built in any kind of decent amount of time, and prices are going up. And there are many folks who simply will not be able to afford to live here. They're going to have to live an hour away. And it's going to be a different place in 10 years, regardless of whether values on homes continue to increase or just kind of slow down.
We got 4 minutes left here.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
you've talked about that on the show before too, right? That in the average like $400,000 house that's being built new construction now, 100,000 of that
Is red tape.
Is red tape,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, it just becomes quite unaffordable for the average person to be able to do that. So.
24%, guys, of a $400,000 home in Albemarle County is associated with the government, and not drywall and roof and granite and doors, garage doors, fixtures, whatever you want to call it. 4 minutes left. 11:25, I promise. Increased. We have to talk about it. The increased taxes and how it's going to potentially impact this market. How it's going to impact your jobs. This ecosystem. Anyone want to hit this one first? I know this man's got a tape here.
I know,
you
he does.
Want to go?
Yeah, go for it. Take it, Jason.
Because we went 12% year over year in the city of Charlottesville on average, 20% in 10th and Page and Orangedale, historically black neighborhoods, and in less than 2 weeks, City Council is considering a 10-cent real estate tax rate increase, and Albemarle County is going to reflect what City of Charlottesville is going to do.
I think, you know, it's easy to look at a tax and think, we're going to target it and we're going to isolate it to this category right here. Let's tax property. The challenge is that ultimately most taxes get passed on to the consumer.
No doubt.
And we're looking at basically this is a tax on tenants. It's a tax on people who are watching their money the closest. And that's why occupancy taxes are so attractive. You're taxing out-of-towners.
Tourists.
Right? So I think the key for any entity like this is probably to look at emulating places like in Connecticut, Massachusetts, that have had pilot programs where there's pay in lieu of taxes, and you can look at entities that are very large in the city that can make a contribution and start to kicking in to pay some bills.
Dude, that was an elbow to UVA right there from Jason Kirby right there.
It's not
with the comparison to
yeah.
Harvard, which is literally what you just did right there.
Yeah.
I'm just more direct about it than you. Isn't that what you just did right there?
Yes, and you can look at Providence and Brown.
Yeah.
There's a city that had a lot of infrastructure issues, and there's an amazing Ivy League university right across the canal. And eventually, I think an institution like that should look at, and I'm not going to talk specifically locally, should look at the benefit of a thriving local community and how it attracts the kind of staff they want and faculty and the kind of students they would like to have there. We're kind of all in this together, and I think that, I'm newer to Charlottesville, but this conversation has been going on for 10 years, and if you're looking at $10 million a year, that's $100 million right there that's been lost since this conversation's been going on. That's the school.
Ladies, anywhere you want to go?
I'm not sure I really want to follow that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of just starting to get creative with some of this. Like, I know I've heard you talk about like this whole like beer garden idea, and I feel like there needs to be some sort of like new blood that brings some of this, like these new ideas that are geared towards, when I think like the young families that live in this neighborhood that want to go and like spend money here locally and go do fun things, how do you capitalize on that in a way that's not something that's like obligatory, like a property tax, but something that people are willfully choosing, and use that to be able to increase, your tax base to be able to do these things that are going to need to be done. Like eventually these schools are going to need to be updated in some capacity. So where do you get that money from without, kind of pricing out the people that you're trying, and pricing out the people that you're trying to ultimately help.
Amen.
Which is what's happening with that type of tax increase. It's exactly what's going to happen. The people who most need help and who are most struggling are going to be most impacted by something like a 10-cent increase.
It's substantial. All right, so we got 90 seconds here. Let's go 30 seconds a pop with some final thoughts. Katie, you want to go first?
I don't.
Being honest. I'll just, I'll spend a little time talking about you.
Oh gosh, that's so embarrassing.
It has been great to watch you enter this industry to achieve the level of success you have.
Thank you.
And I think you underestimate the inspiration you are to many, many other agents out there who are coming into this with all sorts of issues. Maybe it's not little kids, maybe they're taking care of older ones, and to actually make this work. It's been wonderful to watch.
Well said. Yeah. You are a baller.
Oh my gosh. And the fact that you were just so honest and open about, like, especially the being a stay-at-home mom thing. Yeah. Like, I realized I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. And honestly, that was not the best fit and the best situation for me.
Right.
But I felt like I had to, like, love it and make it work. I love my children, but also getting out of the house every now and then would have probably been really healthy for me. Right. Like, I love when I hear you speak openly and honestly about what you've been through and where you're going and just everything. Thank you so much, Katie.
What I would say though is, like, if there's any other, like, kind of, just because this is what I can speak to, if like there's any other stay-at-home moms out there, or like, just people that are in that situation where you feel kind of trapped, or you feel
isolated.
Like really isolated, please, like, I'd love to meet with you. And if you've thought before that, like, you want to enter a career space, but you're not sure what to do, like, I'd love to meet with you. And even if real estate's not for you, but I'd love to help brainstorm something that might be for you. Because I just remember how hard that was and just what a difficult season that was for me. And
especially with COVID.
Yeah, COVID's even more isolating with small children. Yeah. So I would, love to sit down and talk to anybody that had questions on how to make that work.
We love our small children, but sometimes, Katie.
They can be a little soul-sucking at
Katie,
times.
It's a good thing they make them cute.
Yes,
Because if they're
it's
not,
their defense.
I know
It's
their
their
defense.
greatest defense.
Right. Soul sucking. Nikki and Jason and Katie, you guys crushed it.
Thank you.
Thank
I mean, this went
Thank you for having us.
flawlessly. Very well done. Seriously. This is the Monday edition of Real Talk, guys, on the I Love CVille Network, presented by Keller Williams. Judah Wickhauer behind the scenes. We are up in an hour and 4 minutes with the I Love CVille show. Hasta luego. Take care. Good job, guys.
Oh, thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Jerry. This was great.
And on time.